Welcome everyone to this episode of Tiny Pulpit Talks. This is a time when we understand a little bit more about what's going on around the church, around in our lives, in the weather, all kinds of fun things that are happening around our community. If you have questions, just put them in the comments, like us, subscribe. We really want to hear from you and engage. And in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about what is coming up this summer for people. And one of the first things that is happening is our Faith and Film series. And we just had our first Faith and Film sermon / series / Sunday with the Reverend
what's
Dr.
coming up with
Daniel
people.
Cantor. Tell us, was it fun? Was it strange? We come up with these ideas like months in advance and then we execute.
Yeah, it was great. We had 30 or 35 people come to the film, and then we had a great discussion, and the discussion always informs the sermon to some extent. And it's not easy to use a film as the text.
Yeah.
But the goal is to let the film be in the background and find the core themes, and I think we did that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we did.
I don't know if we're advertising, but if people didn't get a chance to watch the movie, just tell them what movie was it this week.
The first film was Palm Springs. This is a Andy Samberg film about being stuck in a time loop. It's sort of a modern version of Groundhog Day film that people might have seen, but I think Palm Springs had more of the modern philosophical points of view from Nietzsche and Camus and some others mixed into it, which was really where the sermon sort of came from.
That's so funny you say Camus. I was in the Inquirers. For those of you who don't know, Inquirers meets every Sunday at 11 o'clock if you're new to the church to learn more. And after the sermon, someone was in there and they were talking about Nietzsche, and then they're like, I think I picked up a little Camus in there too.
A lot of people mentioned that to me afterwards. They're like, it's bringing me back to when I read that years ago.
Yeah.
I had to edit out Camus because it was
Sure, you can only
too much down a rabbit hole. But the myth of Sisyphus is what people were remembering, and that's, it's Camus' absurdist version of that same concept, the eternal return or eternal recurrence, which is Nietzsche's concept, which goes back and back and back,
It also came out around like at the beginning of when a lot of people were locked down, I realized.
2020,
Yeah, it came out in 2020 and a lot of people were home and they were watching Palm Springs, and so a lot of people were telling me, that it was almost like they're describing kind of that experience, like it was kind of a film of its moment. So,
and it's also a film or idea. The philosophical idea is of every moment.
It's timeless.
Because in the film, and if you watch the film, you see very close up the characters wake up, and the mantra is almost wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. It's almost like a Buddhist message in the film.
Yeah.
But it's also the experience that every one of us has, which is where the sermon goes a little bit, which is that we wake up, and if we don't wake up, then that's a different story. But when you wake up, you are who you are in your circumstances. And so there is that loop. And what do you do with that?
Yeah, very cool. I was doing another thing on Wednesday evening, and I heard some people who were at the movie just hooting it up, and talking about they had a really good time. So
it's such a fun movie. Yeah.
And what's the next one?
So Brother from Another Planet is a film from my era, from the mid-'80s. And by filmmaker John Sayles, who really dreamed this film up, literally dreamed it.
Oh, wow.
And put it into film, and very quickly it's set in Harlem. It's got a lot of modern day issues around race and justice. And we'll see. The sermon's a little unbaked at the moment, so I'm waiting.
When I watched it, the thought I kind of had was Coming to America could never have been made without this movie.
Yeah.
Like, one of the great...
Men in Black also.
Yeah, there's so many things that kind of... So we don't want to give away too much, but
But people should come and
hugely
watch it
influential
with
movie.
us. And,
Watch it on Wednesday.
Yeah, come on Wednesday or watch it at home. And
then what is Soul?
Soul,
Is
the
the next
Pixar
one?
movie Soul. Yeah,
and you're talking about Soul.
I am.
Yep.
That should be a good one for all ages,
Yep.
Yeah. Another one that came out around 2020, I think.
It is. Well,
Yeah.
one of the things, so then the other two, since we're on this vein, are Field of Dreams and then Princess Bride. So we have 5 Sundays. These are the 5. And it struck me, they're all fantasy movies. Who wants to take that one? That we got our free reign of movies and we chose
these
live in a
5.
fantasy world. But they're also kind of fabular. They're like fables, but I don't know.
Yeah, because they're good stories, right?
Right.
And they touch on philosophical or religious or spiritual themes, and that's
Exactly.
hard to do in tragedy, maybe. I don't know, but yeah. And we also were trying to keep it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. Fantasy is more fun than reality sometimes.
yeah.
At least these days. Anyway, but so good. I wanted to cover some of that stuff. If you have questions about that this month, just come to the Sundays, come to the Wednesdays, come see the movies, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
We have another big thing happening in the life of the church coming up this summer. Beth, you're about to take a bunch of our young people out of state.
I am.
Where are they going?
About 15 teenagers and a handful of adults are headed to Boston this week on our annual heritage trip. So these are the 9th graders who have come of age this year and been learning all about our tradition and our history and our church. And so now we're all going to go up to Boston as a group and kind of be in the rooms where all that history happened and immerse ourselves in that for a few days.
A lot of our early American religious or early American political leaders were Unitarian.
Yep.
And in that milieu at the time. Do you go to some of those historical places? Is it more places of faith? Is it more of American history, or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both, for sure. I mean, everywhere you walk in Boston, it seems like there's either a Unitarian church or a statue of some politician or leader who was a Unitarian. So, in the Boston Public Garden, there's Charles Sumner statue, for example. He was both a
There's
Unitarian
also a talking cow that gives his quotes. Or there was.
That wasn't there last year,
Yeah.
but we'll have to see about this year. He was an interesting guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Problematic, actually. to some
Problematic,
extent.
yes.
But Supreme Court justice, right?
Yep.
It was, yeah.
So yes, it's we're visiting some churches, but we're also just visiting a lot of other historical spots and places like Walden Pond, which for some people is a religious sacred
It is,
space.
yeah.
Where Henry David Thoreau had his cabin, and so yeah, it's going to be a great.
When I took them, we went to Fenway Park, which is
Another
also
sacred
another
space,
sacred
Also
yeah.
very
space.
holy,
Yeah.
very holy place. Yes, the site of
We
the
sat in the
Samberg.
bleachers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then we also do things like we go on a whale watch. So like we take a boat out of Boston Harbor, like miles out into the water, and pretty much every year we do see some whales. And the teens come back just with this kind of feeling of awe and like, I'm small in this big universe. It's quite an experience.
Yeah.
Being out there on the water and seeing these beautiful creatures.
It is. I when I lived in Hawaii, I saw a lot of whales. Just just sitting at my friend's house, just breaching and all stuff like that. You could just see them in the water. It was wild. There's going to be a deep cut, but there's a song by Harry Chapin called Dogtown, and it is about the people that go out whaling off of Boston Harbor Sound. I mean, it's a song that maybe 15 people have heard, but oh my God.
I'll have to play it for our 9th graders, see what they think.
It's real. It's a real terrifying song. You're welcome for that, everybody. So now you've done the Boston Heritage trip too, and you served in Boston.
Yeah.
What's changed?
Well, they're going to visit the church.
King's Chapel.
Yeah, King's
Yeah.
Chapel. Where I
you
sit.
have to tell people about King's Chapel.
Yeah.
I struggle to describe its singularness to people.
It is a strange place
What is
in
it?
many ways, but it is basically the King's Church before the colony, was free. So it was the King's Chapel in England. They sanctioned a piece of the burial ground to build it because the Puritans wouldn't sell them land.
Okay.
So the government of Britain took this land. They moved bodies. It's in the burial ground next door. John Winthrop is buried and others, and these guys will visit that. The building goes back to the early 1700s. The church goes back into the 1600s. So it's Episcopalian in worship, it's Unitarian in theology, and it's congregational in polity. So it is independent church with a Unitarian theology and an Episcopal prayer book, in which I think it was 1749, I believe, I can't remember the exact date, they changed all the references from the Trinity to unity-like or Unitarian-like references to God. So they basically, we had them, they have them, I had them, books like this from William and Mary, in which they pasted in paper that over the Trinitarian references and wrote the Unitarian references.
Wow.
And there's a Paul Revere Bell, and there's Paul Revere Silver that we used to serve communion with. So it's a pretty interesting and strange place.
Yeah. And we bring the ninth graders there to worship on Sunday. So it's very different from any Unitarian church they've ever experienced before.
It's
but
Christian
it's a really
Unitarianism.
Good experience.
It's, so there's a little cross about that big. But it's Christian Unitarian Church. There's no two ways around that. And
a friend of mine was just in Dublin and sent me a picture of the Unitarian Church there, and another one of our congregants was just in Cape Town, and there was a Unitarian Church there. Can you say something, both of you, you probably know more than me, about what is the flavor of Unitarian churches outside of the U.S.? I mean, I feel like the U.S. has sort of its own kind of version of Unitarian Universalism, but I've heard different things about churches in Cambridge, Oxford, like other places outside of the U.S. Have you guys been to many?
I've been to the ones in India.
Yeah.
And they're probably classically more like the British churches, which are Unitarian Christian, essentially. Except that in India, especially, they don't even celebrate Easter or Christmas because those are Trinitarian in their view. But I think in Europe they were Christian churches that became Unitarian largely. I've been I'm preaching in Auckland, as I said.
That's right.
During my sabbatical and next year, and they sound like pretty much like classic humanist sort of non-Christian church, and a lot of the European churches, I understand, broke away from a lot of that tradition, except the ones that have the big buildings, like in London, Dublin, and some places like that, which are more like King's Chapel.
Very cool. Well, some exciting stuff coming up this summer.
Indeed.
That's really what we wanted to cover today. If you guys have questions, you watching, we're so grateful for the thousands of views we've been getting on total, not per episode, but we'll keep trying. But if you have questions, send them in the chat or email us or subscribe and let us know. Thanks for joining us for Tiny Pulpit Talk, and check in next week and we'll be back with you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.